200 years before Croesus ever dreamed of gold. High in the knife-edged Zagros, where wolves prowl and eagles scream, a scattered people of shepherds looked up from their flocks and decided the world would never be the same. The Assyrian Empire, once the terror of nations, the iron colossus that had ground kingdoms to dust for 6 centuries, was bleeding. Its grip loosened, its shadow flickered, and in that flicker, those shepherds struck. From their mountain villages, no map had ever marked, they rose in rebellion. They shattered Nineveh's chains and watched as the great beast flailed. They set fire to the old order, and one by one, the other subject nations followed in rebellion until the mightiest empire in the east was reduced beneath ashes. Out of those ashes, those modest shepherds would forge a new empire, and from them a child marked for death on a wolf-haunted ridge, a child the gods themselves refused to let die, would rise to conquer all of Asia. This is Tomes of the West. Episode 2: The Rise of Persia. Among the Medes, in the wind-swept mountains of the Zagros, emerged a man of extraordinary cunning and ambition named Deiokes, son of Phraortes. He harbored a burning desire for power. At the time, the Medes lived scattered in isolated villages, and Deiokes, already renowned in his own hamlet, began to champion justice with unprecedented zeal. Lawlessness plagued the land of Media. Robberies, disputes, and unfair rulings ran rampant, pitting injustice against righteousness in constant strife. Deiokes positioned himself as a beacon of fairness, resolving conflicts with wisdom and impartiality. His fellow villagers, impressed by his upright character, elected him as their judge. Word of his just verdicts spread like wildfire. People from neighboring villages, tired of corrupt judges that had long tormented them, flocked to Deiokes for resolution. They abandoned their local arbiters, entrusting him alone with their disputes. His reputation soared. He was the man who decided cases according to unvarnished truth. But Deiokes was playing a longer game. As the crowds grew, with more and more seekers of justice converging on him, Deiokes realized the moment was ripe. He abruptly refused to continue judging, declaring that it was no longer worth neglecting his personal affairs to mediate for others. Chaos ensued. Without his steady hand, robbery and anarchy surged through the villages, worse than ever before. The Medes, desperate and disorganized, gathered in assembly to debate their plight. I imagine Deiokes' allies argued passionately, "We can't survive in this lawless state. Let's appoint a king from our own ranks to bring order, so our land can thrive and we can focus on our labors without fear of ruin." Their words struck a chord. The assembly agreed to crown a king over all the tribes of the Medes. When nominations flew, Deiokes' name echoed loudest, praised by all for his wisdom and integrity. Unanimously, they chose him. Deiokes wasted no time asserting his authority. He commanded the Medes to construct a palace befitting a monarch and to furnish him with a bodyguard of elite spearmen. Eager to please, they complied, erecting a grand and fortified residence exactly where he specified. They even let him handpick his guards from the finest Median warriors. With power firmly in his grasp, Deiokes forced the Medes to consolidate their strength. He ordered them to build a single, impregnable city, prioritizing it above all others. The Medes obeyed, crafting massive walls that now encircle the city we now call Ecbatana. These fortifications were a marvel of design, 7 concentric circles, each rising higher than the last by the height of its battlements. The hilly terrain aided the structure, but human ingenuity elevated it further. The outermost wall matched the girth of Athens' own circumference. And the colors. The battlements gleamed in vivid hues, white for the first, black for the second, crimson for the third, blue for the fourth, red for the fifth. The innermost 2 shone even brighter, one plated in silver, the other in gold. Within the heart of these rings stood the royal palace and treasuries, a symbol of Deiokes' unassailable might. Deiokes decreed that the people dwell around this walled stronghold, encircling his domain. He instituted strict protocols, the first of their kind. No one could approach the king directly. All communication flowed through messengers. The monarch remained unseen, a mysterious figure. Laughter or spitting in his presence, or anyone's, was deemed disgraceful. This pompous isolation served a sly purpose. Deiokes' peers, raised alongside him from noble families and no less brave, might resent his elevation if they saw him daily. By vanishing from sight, he cultivated an aura of otherworldly superiority, as if he were cast from a divine mold. His regime was ironclad in upholding justice. Subjects penned their grievances and submitted them. Deiokes reviewed each, issuing verdicts that he dispatched back. He was merciless toward wrongdoers. If whispers of misconduct reached him, he summoned the offender and dispensed punishment fitting the crime. Spies and informants blanketed his realm, ensuring no deed escaped his watchful eye. Under Deiokes, the Medes unified as a single nation, comprising tribes like the Busai, Paratacanians, Strucates, Arizantians, Budians, and Magians. He reigned for 53 years before passing the crown to his son, Phraortes. Phraortes, inheriting this consolidated power, wasn't content ruling just the Medes. He set his sights on expansion, first targeting the Persians. Marching against them, he subdued these fierce warriors, making them the initial vassals of the Medes. Bolstered by 2 formidable nations, Phraortes swept across Asia, conquering tribe after tribe. His ambitions peaked when he turned on the Assyrians at Nineveh, once masters of all, now isolated after their allies defected, though still prosperous within their borders. The clash was brutal. Phraortes hurled his forces relentlessly at the Assyrian defenses, but fortune turned against him. In the heat of battle, amid clashing spears and thundering war cries, he fell slain, and the bulk of his army perished with him. His 22-year reign ended in catastrophe. The throne passed to his son Cyaxares, grandson of Deiokes, a warrior king fiercer than his ancestors. Cyaxares revolutionized warfare, organizing Asia's fighters into disciplined units, spearmen in tight formations, archers raining volleys from afar, cavalry charging with thunderous hooves. No longer a chaotic mass, his armies moved with precision. This tactical genius shone in his campaigns. He battled the Lydians in a legendary encounter where day turned to eerie night as arrows are said to have halted mid-flight, as an eclipse blotted the sun and halted the fighting. Cyaxares then consolidated rule over all Asia east of the Halys River. Rallying his subjects, he avenged his father by assaulting Nineveh. The battle against the Assyrians was intense. Cyaxares' forces clashed with the defenders in a whirlwind of steel and shouts. Spears thrust forward, arrows whistled through the air, horsemen wheeled in daring flanks. The Medes pressed hard, overwhelming the Assyrians and claiming victory. But as Cyaxares besieged the city to land the final blow, a massive Scythian horde descended on his kingdom, led by Madias, son of Protohias. Cyaxares halted the conquest of Assyria to deal with the Scythian scourge. These Scythians, nomadic horse lords from the eastern European plains, had pursued the fleeing Cimmerians from Europe into Asia. Their path was arduous. From the Maeotian Lake to the Phasis River and Colchian lands, a 30-day trek for the unburdened. The invasion hit like a storm. Medes and Scythians locked in combat, the air thick with dust, warriors grunting as blades met shields, but the Scythians' ferocity prevailed. The Medes crumbled, losing their new empire as the nomads seized control of all Asia. For 28 years the Scythians rampaged, their arrogance and brutality laying waste to everything. They demanded exorbitant tributes, then pillaged freely on horseback, stripping tribes bare. Their march turned south to Egypt, reaching Syria. There, Pharaoh Psammetichos confronted them with pleas and bribing them with riches, halting their advance. As the Scythians returned back through Ascalon, most passed harmlessly, but stragglers looted the ancient temple of Aphrodite Urania's ancient temple, the oldest of her shrines founded by Phoenicians. Finally, Cyaxares struck back. Feigning hospitality, he hosted all the Scythian leaders to a lavish banquet. As wine flowed and guards grew lax, the Medes pounced in a swift, deadly ambush, slaughtering their inebriated foes. With their power restored, the Medes reclaimed their subjects and proceeded to finally capture Nineveh, subjugating Assyria except Babylon. Cyaxares ruled 40 years, including the Scythian interlude, before dying. His son Astyages then ascended. Astyages fathered a daughter, Mandani. Though after her birth, a terrifying dream haunted him. Waters gushed from her, flooding his city and proceeding to engulf all Asia. Consulting Magian dream interpreters, he learned its ominous truth, that from her would rise a king to rule over his kingdom. He grew fearful that this meant bad omens for himself. As Mandani grew to marriageable age, Astyages, still shadowed by the vision, refused to wed her to any of the noble Medes who matched his rank. He dreaded that a powerful union might fulfill the prophecy. Instead, he chose a Persian named Cambyses, a man of good lineage but quiet temperament, far below a Mede of even middling status in Astyages' eyes. This match, he hoped, would keep the waters contained, the threat subdued. In the first year of their marriage, another dream plagued Astyages. From his daughter's womb sprang a vine, twisting and growing until it overshadowed all of Asia, its tendrils claiming every corner of the land. Awakening in a sweat, he summoned the interpreters once more. Their words confirmed his deepest fears. The child she carried would usurp his rule. Mandani was pregnant, and Astyages acted swiftly. He dispatched messengers to summon her from Persian lands and bringing her under his watchful eye in the palace. There, he guarded her closely, plotting to destroy the infant the moment it drew breath. The Magians had made it clear. The offspring of Mandani would sit on his throne. When the child was born, a boy, strong and crying, Astyages wasted no time. He summoned Harpagos, his closest kin and most trusted adviser, the man who managed all his affairs. Harpagos arrived, bowing low before the king. Astyages' voice was cold and commanding. "Harpagos, do not neglect this task I give you. Fail me, and you'll regret choosing others' gain over mine. Take this child, born to Mandani, carry it to your home and slay it. Bury it as you see fit." Harpagos, pale but composed, replied, "O king, you've never found fault in me before, and I guard against any future offense. If this is your will, I shall serve faithfully." Adorned in fine linens as if prepared for a royal funeral, the infant was handed over. Harpagos carried him home, tears streaming down his face as he recounted Astyages' orders to his wife. She gasped, her eyes wide with horror. "What will you do?" she asked, her voice trembling. Harpagos shook his head. "Not as the king commands. Even if he descends into deeper madness, I won't commit this murder. The child is my kin through Mandani. Astyages is old, without a son. If power passes to me after him, won't I face the same peril? No, the boy must die, but by one of Astyages' servants, not mine." Without delay, Harpagos summoned a herdsman named Mithridates, one who tended flocks in the wildest pastures, mountains teeming with beasts, far from prying eyes. Mithridates lived with his wife, a fellow slave named Kaino. Their home lay on the rugged skirts of the mountains north of Ecbatana, toward the Euxine Sea, a land of lofty peaks and dense forests, while the rest of Media stretched as flat plains. When Mithridates arrived, urgency in the air, Harpagos thrust the bundle into his arms. "Astyages commands you to take this child to the most desolate mountain spot, where it will perish swiftly from exposure or wild animals. If you spare it, he'll kill you in the cruelest way. I'll send watchers to ensure it's done." Mithridates nodded, fear knotting his stomach, and departed with the child, a servant trailing him part way to confirm the king's lineage and the grim order. Back at his humble dwelling, Mithridates found his wife in the throes of labor. By divine providence, as he had journeyed to the city, she had given birth to a stillborn son. Both had worried, he for her safety, she for the sudden summons from Harpagos, unusual and ominous. As Mithridates entered, his wife spoke first, relief mixing with concern. "Why did Harpagos call you so urgently?" He sighed, unfolding the tale, the palace filled with mourning, the infant gasping and adorned in gold and embroidered robes. Harpagos' threats echoed in his mind. "I thought it some servant's child," he said, "but the servant revealed it's Mandani's son by Cambyses. Astyages orders his death." Unwrapping the bundle, he showed her the boy, healthy, beautiful, destined for doom. Tears welled in her eyes at the sight. She fell to her knees, clutching his legs. "Please, don't expose him. The mountains are cruel. Wolves, lions, the cold night." But Mithridates was firm. "I must. Harpagos will send spies. Death awaits us all if I fail," she pleaded, but he stood resolute. Then inspiration struck her. If it must be exposed, let it be seen. Our own child was born dead. Expose him instead, and we'll raise this one as ours. You won't betray Harpagos. We'll gain a son, and our dead boy will get a royal burial. Mithridates saw the wisdom in her words. Swiftly, he swapped the infants. He dressed his stillborn son in the royal adornments, gold chains, fine cloth, and placed him in the chest. The living boy he gave to his wife, who cradled him tenderly, naming him something simple. Mithridates trekked to the barren heights, laying the body where beasts prowled. For 3 days, he or his underling watched as required. On the 3rd, he returned to the city, reporting to Harpagos, "It's done. Show me to the body if you wish." Harpagos sent trusted guards. They viewed the corpse, Mithridates' own child, and buried it. The deception held. Years passed. The boy grew to 10, strong and spirited, in the herdsman's village among ox stalls and simple folk. One day, playing in the road with other lads his age, they chose him as king in their games, for he seemed most fit, commanding with natural authority. He assigned roles. Some built play palaces of sticks and mud, others stood as spearmen guards, one as the king's eye, another as messenger. All obeyed, except one, the son of Artembares, a prominent Mede. This boy refused his task, scoffing at the herdsman's son. Fury flashed in the boy's eyes. "Seize him!" he ordered. The others grabbed the defiant lad, binding his hands and feet. The young king scourged him harshly, lashes whipping through the air, the boy crying out in pain and indignation. Freed at last, humiliated, he raced to the city, bursting into his father's presence. "Father, that slave's son, the herdsman's boy, whipped me like a criminal. Look at my back." Artembaris, enraged at the insult to his noble blood, stormed to Astyages' palace, dragging his son. "O king," he thundered, "your slave, a mere herdsman's whelp, has outraged us." He bared the boy's scourged shoulders, red and welted. Astyages, honoring Artembaris' status, summoned the herdsman and the boy. When they arrived, the king's gaze fixed on the child, now called Cyrus, though not yet known as such. "You, son of a lowly herdsman, dare scourge the son of my foremost noble?" The boy met his eyes boldly. "Master, I did it justly. The village boys made me king in play, for I seemed best suited. They followed my commands, but this one disobeyed, ignoring my authority until punished. If I deserve penalty, here I am." As the words hung in the air, recognition dawned on Astyages. The boy's features mirrored his own: proud chin, piercing eyes. His speech was too free for a peasant. His age matched the exposed infant's. The timing of that long-ago laying forth aligned perfectly. Stunned into silence, Astyages finally composed himself. To dismiss Artembaris, he said smoothly, "All will be set right. You and your son shall have no complaint." Servants led the boy inside, leaving the herdsman alone with the king. "Who gave you this child?" Astyages demanded, his voice like thunder. "Where did he come from?" The herdsman, trembling, claimed, "He's mine, born to my wife. She lives with me still." Astyages sneered, "Foolish to court torture." He signaled his guards. They seized Mithridates, dragging him toward the rack. In terror, the truth spilled out. From Harpagos' summons to the swap with his dead son, every detail laid bare. Begging for mercy, he ended his confession. Astyages released the herdsman, his anger now blazing toward Harpagos. "Summon him!" he ordered. When Harpagos arrived, the king feigned calm. "Harpagos, how did you kill the child I gave you, Mandani's son?" Seeing the herdsman, Harpagos chose truth over lies. "O king, I pondered how to obey without murdering kin. I gave him to this herdsman, ordering exposure on the wild mountains, threatening death if he failed. When done, my eunuchs confirmed and buried the body. That's how it happened." Astyages masked his fury, recounting the herdsman's tale as if it pleased him. "The child lives, and all is well. I grieved over this, estranged from my daughter. Fortune turns happily. Send your son to meet the boy. Tonight I sacrifice thanks to the gods. Come, you shall all dine with me." When Harpagos heard this summons from Astyages, he bowed low in reverence, his heart swelling with unexpected fortune. His grave offense had somehow twisted into profit, and now an invitation to dine at the king's table under happy omens. It was a great matter indeed. He hurried home, his mind racing, and without delay summoned his only son, a boy of about 13, full of youthful vigor. "Go to the palace," Harpagos instructed, "and obey whatever the king commands." Overjoyed, he then confided in his wife the strange turn of events, his voice laced with relief and wonder, but Astyages harbored darker designs. As soon as the boy arrived, the king ordered him seized. In a chamber shrouded in secrecy, the child's throat was cut. His body divided limb from limb with cold precision. Some pieces roasted over flames that crackled and spat, others boiled in steaming pots until tender. The flesh was then dressed for eating, arranged with deceptive care, and set aside for the evening's grim feast. As dinner hour approached, the palace halls filled with guests, their chatter echoing off stone walls. Tables groaned under platters of roasted mutton for the others and for Astyages himself. But before Harpagos lay a solitary spread, the carved remains of his own son, save for the head, hands and feet, which were concealed in a woven basket nearby. The air grew thick with the scent of roasted meats and spices, masking the horror beneath. Harpagos ate, unaware, his compliments flowing as the meal progressed. When he leaned back, sated, Astyages leaned forward with a sly smile. "Did the banquet please you, Harpagos?" The advisor nodded eagerly, declaring it the finest he'd known. At the king's signal, servants approached with the covered basket. "Uncover it," they urged, "and take what you desire." Harpagos lifted the lid, his eyes falling on the severed head, the small hands and feet, unmistakable remnants of his young son. Yet he contained himself, his face a mask of composure, no gasp escaping his lips. Astyages watched closely. "Do you know what flesh you've eaten?" Harpagos met his gaze steadily. "I know, my lord, and whatever the king does is pleasing to me." With that, he gathered the gruesome parts and departed, his steps measured, though his soul surely screamed. At home, he pieced them together as best he could and committed them to the earth, a father's final heartbroken rite. This was the vengeance Astyages exacted on Harpagos. But his thoughts soon turned to Cyrus, the boy who had survived. He summoned the Magian interpreters once more, those same seers who had unraveled his dreams. "How did you judge my vision?" he demanded. They repeated their words. The child would have been king had he lived, but fate had intervened, or so they believed. Astyages revealed the truth. The boy lives. In the countryside, the village lads crowned him king in their games. He ruled them utterly, appointing guards with spears at the ready, doorkeepers vigilant at thresholds, messengers darting with urgent words. He commanded as a true sovereign would. The Magians pondered, then replied, "If he lives and was made king by chance, fear not. He won't rule twice. Some prophecies fizzle to nothing. Dreams often end in feeble whispers." Astyages nodded, his own inclinations aligning. "I too believe the dream fulfilled in play. No more threat shall come from him." Yet caution lingered. "Advise me. What must I do to safeguard my house?" The Magians, ever self-serving, urged peace. "Your rule must endure, for if it falls to this Persian boy, we Medes become slaves to foreigners. Keep us in power, and we share your honors. The dream spent itself trivially. Rejoice! Send the boy away to his Persian kin out of sight." Relieved, Astyages summoned Cyrus. "My boy, I wronged you due to a false dream, but you've survived by your own stars. Go now to Persia in peace. I'll provide an escort. There you'll find true parents, not like that herdsman Mithridates and his wife." Cyrus departed, arriving at Cambyses' house. His real parents, learning his identity, embraced him with tears and joy. They'd long believed him dead at birth. "How did you live?" they pressed. Cyrus recounted his tale, raised as the herdsman's son, ignorant until the escorts revealed all on the journey. He praised his foster mother endlessly, Kaino, the central figure in his story. Seizing on this, his parents spread a rumor among Persians. Cyrus had been suckled by a wild dog, adding a supernatural gloss to his survival, making it seem divinely ordained. As Cyrus matured into manhood, he stood out, bravest and most beloved among his peers. Harpagos, nursing his grudge, sought alliance, showering gifts to win the young man's favor. Vengeance burned in him. As a mere noble, he couldn't strike Astyages alone. But Cyrus's fortunes mirrored his own suffering, offering a path. Already Harpagos had sown dissent. Astyages' cruelty alienated Median chiefs. Whispering in their ears, he convinced them to rally behind Cyrus and overthrow the cruel tyrant. To contact Cyrus in watched Persia, Harpagos devised a cunning ploy. He gutted a hare, leaving its fur intact, and slipped in a scrolled message. Sewing it shut, he handed it to his most loyal servant, disguised as a hunter with nets slung over shoulder. "Give this to Cyrus," he whispered. "Tell him to open it alone, with his own hands." The servant journeyed, delivering the hair. Cyrus, intrigued, sliced it open privately. Unfurling the paper, he read, "Son of Cambyses, the gods watch over you, or you'd never have risen so high. Avenge yourself on Astyages, your would-be killer. By his intent, you would be dead, but gods and I preserved you. You know your story and my torments for sparing you. Follow my counsel. Become ruler of his lands. Rouse Persians to revolt, march on Medes. If I'm named general against you, or any prominent Mede, all is set. They'll defect first, toppling him. Everything's prepared. Act swiftly." Cyrus pondered deeply, scheming the best persuasion for Persian revolt. He settled on a plan. Writing a false decree, he assembled his people. Unfurling it, he read aloud, "Astyages has appointed me your commander. All Persians are to come tomorrow, each with a reaping hook." As commanded, all the Persian tribes gathered to follow his orders. He led them to a thorny tract, 18 to 20 furlongs square. "Clear it in one day," he commanded. They toiled under scorching sun, hooks slashing at stubborn brambles, sweat pouring, muscles aching until the land lay bare. Exhausted, they departed. Next dawn, bathed and fresh, they returned. Cyrus had slaughtered his father's flocks, goats bleating their last, sheep and cattle felled with swift blades, meats roasted, wines poured, provisions lavish. They reclined in meadows, feasting heartily. Sated, Cyrus asked, "Which day pleased you more, yesterday's toil or today's bounty?" "Today's by far," they chorused. "Yesterday, endless evil, today, pure good." Seizing the moment, Cyrus unveiled his plot. "Persians, choose. Obey me for such joys without slavery, or refuse and face labors like yesterday's forever. I'm fated to lead you to freedom. You're no lesser than Medes, in war or otherwise. Revolt from Astyages now." With a leader at last, Persians eagerly rebelled, chafing long under Median yoke. Word reached Astyages. Furious, he summoned Cyrus. But Cyrus responded through a messenger, "I'll arrive sooner than you wish." Astyages armed all the Medes and with divine blindness appointed Harpagos their general. The armies marched to war and met on an arid plain near Pasargadae. Tension built as lines formed. Persians fierce for freedom, Medes divided. Spears glinted, shields locked. When Harpagos gave the order to advance, some Medes fought loyally, charging with war cries, blades clanging against Persian defenses in frantic melees. Arrows whistled, horses neighed in chaos, but most, in on the plot, defected during the battle, crossing lines with shouts of alliance. The rest feigned effort, then fled in droves, dust clouds rising as they routed. The small Median force that remained shattered shamefully. Astyages, hearing of the defeat, raged. "Cyrus won't escape!" He impaled the misleading Magians as charlatans and then mustered remnants, youths and elders from the city. Leading them out personally, they met Persians in desperate combat. The air filled with battle's roar, spears thrusting, shields splintering, men grunting in exertion. Suspense gripped as lines wavered. Would the old king's fury prevail? But Persians with Harpagos pressed relentlessly, overwhelming the makeshift force. Astyages was captured alive, his Medes slain or scattered. Harpagos approached king, now bound in chains, mocking him gleefully. "How fares slavery, your majesty?" he asked rhetorically. "I will always remember that dinner, your feast of my son's flesh." Astyages glared. "Is this your doing?" he asked. Harpagos happily admitted it, citing his letter. "Fool and villain!" Astyages spat. "You could have seized the throne yourself instead of giving it to another." Why enslave the Medes over a meal? I'd rather it have gone to a Mede than a Persian. And so Astyages fell, laid low in the dust of Pasargadae, his crown torn away by the very grandson he once ordered slain. The vine had spread, the Medes knelt, and for the first time a Persian would sit as king of kings. Yet the story of Cyrus the Great has only just begun. Next time, we'll travel with Cyrus after conquering gold-rich Lydia, as he tries to pacify Ionia, march on Babylon, and tame the mighty Massagetai. The saga roars on. If these ancient fires have kindled something in you, subscribe, like, and follow. The age of Cyrus is here. Join us in the following episode as we unfurl the next scroll.